tears streaming down 7-year-old Toby Bennett's face, reflected in the polished silverware of Bellevue's most exclusive restaurant. His father, William Bennett, the 39-year-old tech billionaire, whose name graced the skyline of Seattle, sat across from him, deep in conversation with investors who couldn't stop glancing uncomfortably at the quietly sobbing child. "Toby, please," William whispered, his voice a mixture of embarrassment and exasperation. "We talked about this. Just eat your dinner." But Toby couldn't stop. His small shoulders shook as he tried to muffle his sobs, his untouched plate of gourmet mac and cheese growing cold. The 5th anniversary of his mother's death had passed just 3 days ago, and William had been too consumed with the largest merger in his company's history to remember. Amelia Rodriguez, a 28-year-old waitress with warm brown eyes and a single mother to her own 6-year-old daughter, watched the scene unfold from across the dining room. In her 3 years working at the Ivory Tower, she had served countless celebrities and business moguls, but something about the little boy's quiet desperation called to her in a way she couldn't ignore. "Is everything all right with your meals, gentlemen?" Amelia approached the table with practiced grace, but her eyes focused on Toby. "Everything's fine," William replied curtly, barely looking up from his tablet, where stock projections scrolled endlessly. "The boy's just tired." Amelia knelt beside Toby's chair, breaking every protocol of the 5-star establishment. "Would you like some fresh mac and cheese? I can have the chef make it extra cheesy," she whispered, just loud enough for the boy to hear. Toby looked up, his blue eyes, a mirror image of his father's, swimming with tears. He shook his head slightly. "You know," Amelia said softly, "sometimes when my daughter is sad, we make up stories about the people around us. Like that man over there." She nodded discreetly toward an elderly gentleman dining alone. "I bet he's a secret astronaut who's walked on the moon." A tiny flicker of interest crossed Toby's face. "Would you like to try?" she asked. Toby hesitated, then whispered, "The lady in the red dress is running away from home because her pet tiger got too big." Amelia's laugh was genuine and warm. "That's better than mine. You're good at this." For the first time that evening, a small smile tugged at the corner of Toby's mouth. William glanced over, surprised by the change in his son's demeanor. His gaze met Amelia's, and for a moment, something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or a question. "I should get back to work," Amelia said, standing up. "But if you need anything else, just ask for Amelia." As she turned to leave, Toby grabbed her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. Amelia squeezed his small fingers gently, before returning to her duties, unaware that this small interaction would change the course of all their lives. Later that evening, as the restaurant emptied and the Bennett party prepared to leave, William approached the payment counter while Toby waited by the coat check. "Your server tonight was Amelia, correct?" William asked the maitre d'. "Yes, Mr. Bennett. I hope everything was satisfactory." William nodded, his expression unreadable. "She was kind to my son. I'd like to leave something extra." He placed his black card on the counter alongside a business card. "And please give her this. Tell her to call if she's interested in a different position." The maitre d' raised an eyebrow, but knew better than to question William Bennett. "Of course, sir." Across the restaurant, Amelia wiped down her last table, mentally calculating how much of tonight's tips would go toward Lucia's upcoming birthday party and how much toward their perpetually behind rent. Working at the Ivory Tower paid better than most restaurants, but Seattle's cost of living meant she was always one emergency away from financial disaster. "Amelia," the maitre d' called, "a word before you clock out." She followed him to the office, anxiety rising. Had she broken too many rules by talking to the Bennett boy? Was this a warning? Or worse, was she being let go? "Mr. Bennett left this for you." He handed her an envelope with the business card and a $5,000 tip. Amelia's knees nearly buckled. "That's impossible. It must be a mistake." "William Bennett doesn't make mistakes with money," the maitre d' replied dryly, "and he specifically asked for you to have this." With trembling hands, Amelia opened the envelope. Inside was a check that made her gasp, along with the business card that read simply, "William Bennett, CEO Bennett Technologies," with a personal phone number handwritten on the back. "This is crazy," Amelia whispered. "That's not all," the maitre d' continued. "He mentioned something about a position." Amelia stared at the business card, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. What kind of position would a billionaire offer a waitress, and why her? The answer came 3 days later when her phone rang with an unknown number as she was walking Lucia home from school. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Patricia Winters, Mr. Bennett's executive assistant. He was hoping you might be available to come in for an interview tomorrow morning." "Interview?" Amelia repeated, watching Lucia skip ahead on the sidewalk. "For what position exactly?" "Mr. Bennett would prefer to discuss that in person. The car will pick you up at 9. Will that work with your schedule?" Before Amelia could process what was happening, she found herself agreeing, hanging up, and staring at her phone in disbelief. That night, after tucking Lucia into bed, Amelia searched online for information about William Bennett. The results were overwhelming. Tech prodigy who built his first company at 19, billionaire by 30, widower at 34, when his wife Elizabeth died in a private plane crash. Photos showed a strikingly handsome man with piercing blue eyes, usually looking serious or slightly annoyed with the camera. Very few pictures included his son, and those that did were mostly from formal events, the boy always appearing solemn beyond his years. One article from 3 years ago caught her attention. Bennett refuses to hire another nanny after son's kidnapping attempt. Apparently, a nanny hired through an agency had been part of a plot to kidnap Toby for ransom. The plan was foiled, but William had become extremely protective and distrustful since. "Is that why the boy looked so sad?" Amelia wondered aloud. No mother, distant father, and no one else to care for him. The next morning, after dropping Lucia at school, Amelia found a sleek black car waiting outside their modest apartment building. The driver opened the door without a word, and she slipped into the back seat. Feeling completely out of place in her best interview outfit, a simple navy dress she'd found on clearance last year. Bennett Technologies' headquarters dominated the Seattle skyline, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. Amelia's stomach knotted as the elevator whisked her up to the executive floor, where Patricia, a poised woman in her 50s, greeted her. "Ms. Rodriguez, welcome. Mr. Bennett will see you now." The office was exactly what Amelia had expected. Minimalist, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. What she hadn't expected was Toby sitting in a corner of the massive room, quietly building something with electronic blocks, while his father typed at a holographic display. William looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Mr. Bennett," Amelia nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I admit I'm curious about what position you might have in mind for someone with my qualifications." William studied her for a moment before speaking. "The night at the restaurant, my son was crying. You knelt down and whispered something to him that made him smile. What did you say?" The question caught Amelia off guard. "I suggested we make up stories about the other people in the restaurant. It's a game I play with my daughter when she's upset." William's gaze intensified. "And how did you know that's what he needed?" Amelia glanced at Toby, who was pretending not to listen. "I didn't. I just know what works with my Lucia. Children usually need connection more than solutions. A flicker of something. Recognition? Regret?" crossed William's face. "That's precisely why I asked you here today, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm not looking for an employee for my company. I'm looking for someone for Toby." Amelia's mind raced as she processed William's words. "Someone for Toby? Like a nanny?" "Not exactly." William's eyes darted briefly to his son before returning to Amelia. "Toby has tutors, security, and household staff who ensure his physical needs are met. What he lacks is—" He trailed off, seeming uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "A consistent emotional presence," Amelia finished quietly. William nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yes. The article you undoubtedly read, the kidnapping attempt," Amelia acknowledged. "That barely scratches the surface." William leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There have been 3 separate incidents. The first was the nanny from the agency. The second was a family friend who turned out to be working for competitors hoping to leverage Toby against me. The third—" His voice hardened. "The third was his maternal aunt." Amelia's eyes widened. His own aunt? Elizabeth's sister blamed me for the plane crash. She became unstable, tried to take him from his school. William ran a hand through his immaculately styled hair, momentarily disrupting its perfect arrangement. "I've ensured Toby's physical safety, but at the cost of his happiness. The incident at the restaurant made that painfully clear. Across the room, Toby had abandoned any pretense of not listening. His small hands had stopped moving over his electronic building blocks, his head tilted slightly toward their conversation. "Mr. Bennett," Amelia said carefully, "what exactly is the position you're offering?" William stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "I'm offering you a role as Toby's companion, someone who can be there for him in ways I've failed to be. You would pick him up from school, spend afternoons with him, accompany us to dinners and events. Essentially, you would be the stable, nurturing presence he needs. You want to hire me to care about your son?" Amelia couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. William turned, his expression shuttered. "I want to hire you to show him that it's safe to form connections again. My son hasn't truly smiled in 3 years, Ms. Rodriguez. Not until you spoke with him." Amelia glanced at Toby, who quickly looked away, pretending to be absorbed in his blocks again. Her heart